So thank you very much to Adam for inviting me along to Bristol JS. Thank you very much to Just Eat. This is an amazing venue. Technical setup's a bit dodgy. So yeah, this is real-time web apps in 2015 and beyond, and I'll explain why I kind of go web. So I recently gave a similar talk to this, no, in fact this talk, at Future Web Apps in Boston. And when I looked at the schedule for the talks there were 5 talks on real-time technologies, 4 on IoT, and there were 21 talks at the event. So 40% of the talks at Future Web Apps in Boston were on real-time technologies. And the reason I want to highlight that is that I've been working with real-time tech since 2001, originally in finance, building like web trading, apps and platforms and SDKs. And I haven't seen kind of this trend in usage of real-time tech since 2011 when I first joined Pusher. So I think we're in the midst of a kind of second real-time revolution, where we had 2011, it was kind of dominated by marketing, going real-time, everything. But there was definitely an uptake in the use of the technology. And I think we're going through a second phase of that now. And I think that trend's going to continue. And hopefully I'll demonstrate why I think that. I think IoT has a part to play in that, but I don't think it's absolutely the be-all and end-all of this. So I want to cover the past, the present, and the future of real-time, and I kind of want to talk about why the internet is our communications platform and why real-time is so important. So my name's Phil Leggetter. I work at Pusher. Who's heard of Pusher? Okay, quite a lot of people. So we're a real-time messaging service that helps you add real-time data and therefore real-time features to web, mobile, and IoT apps. We provide SDKs and the real-time infrastructure so that you can add those sorts of features to your apps. I'm not going to speak specifically about Pusher. I really want to talk about kind of where we came from and how we've ended up here. So in the past, we would refer to like real-time web apps, and the problem with that is, if you look at it strictly, the web, is a set of documents, web resources, hypertext links, and so on. So we don't really mean the web in that definition. We mean the internet, which is our networked connection layer, our communication platform. So instead of meaning real-time web apps, we really mean real-time internet applications. So real-time, who thinks real-time is a bit of a fad and is overused? Mike, just you. I'm pleased that people don't. So real-time really matters when there's a timely nature to data, right? So the definitions are like hard real-time, where there's an absolute time constraint to data after it's generated to being dealt with and handled. Firm real-time, where you need to be aware that you're using maybe a slow, like a high latency network to deliver your data, and you need to put kind of constraints around that delivery of data. And as the data gets later in delivery, the system degrades, but it doesn't completely fail. And soft real-time, which is probably where we are with web apps. There's kind of the data needs to appear, but the app won't break if it's a little bit late. But it really depends on the experience. So if the data is truly timely, then real-time really matters. You also need to maintain context. The example I give is not a very good one, but say somebody tweets about John Terry on a Saturday. They say, "Get in, John Terry." Now on a Saturday, that means John Terry's maybe cleared the ball off the line or headed a goal. But if it's during the week and he's just parked in a disabled bay or slept with his teammate's wife, then John Terry Get In has a much more negative meaning. So real-time helps you maintain context. And I think the main thing, the one that I'm going to waffle on about most, is the user experience that you can potentially deliver. It's really important for human interaction that you kind of maintain context and don't wander off. Otherwise, you lose the experience that you're trying to deliver. You have a Skype call and there's a delay. It ruins that experience. Any kind of human interaction is really important. So voice, or just generally the experience is interactive. The faster those interactions, the better. So real-time is really required when there's a need or demand for up-to-date information or to maintain that engaging user experience. And these aren't any new needs or demands. I mean, we're all here, and we all spend a lot of time chatting with each other prior to this, because we want to interact with people. And we also want to be in the know around, what's the latest news, what's the latest data on something. But the problem is, if we take that to the internet, we've been kind of restricted in terms of what we could do. And if we look at my amazing Google Draw diagram, the very kind of raw network layer, we've only got a small layer to work with. And the idea of this diagram is to represent the amount of developer effort that's required for us to truly innovate and build something amazing, some sort of application. And going back to even 1973, people were trying to build real-time chat. This is something called Talkomatic. So in 1973, someone was trying to build real-time chat. Eventually, we got HTTP, driven by the World Wide Web, and it was much better, but we still kind of wanted more. Who remembers Yahoo Chat? So I was at uni when I remember first seeing this. This says 2002, but I'm pretty sure I graduated in 2001, so I know it was around then. And if we look at this, it's got voice, so there's no way that this is native browser. This is a Java applet, or has a Java applet embedded somewhere. So as developers, we were trying to build experiences in the browser, which was our portal into the internet, as our way of accessing the internet, communicating and viewing things. But the native runtime that we had didn't allow us to achieve what we wanted to do. One of the things that drove real-time forward was finance. Who works in finance? It's perfectly fine, don't worry about it.
My wife.
Sorry. I used to work in finance. This is Reuters Cobra 3000 Extra. It was a FAT client, a desktop client on Windows. And it cost a lot of money. You would pay Reuters a massive fee for both the data and for the installation of this. So it kind of made sense that this demand for, obviously trading, the timely nature of delivery of data and doing stuff with that data really matters. But if you could take that to the browser, you could benefit from removing the license fee for that FAT client and delivering it to a runtime that everybody that had a PC had. Now, what Reuters did was they reduced the license fee for the FAT client and increased the license for the data, but that's their prerogative. But there was obviously a business demand and a need to do this sort of thing. I'm not going to go into the hacks. Who's tried to hack with real time and done, streaming through iframe or ActiveX controls, or so a total pain. So we had to do, and again, the runtime that we had, browser, had incompatibilities, had problems. It was just a total pain. So we had Java applets. The company I worked for, they had a Java applet and used Live Connect to communicate between the applet and JavaScript, Flash, and various HTTP hacks. But in around 2009, 2010, real-time went mainstream, and it was really the demonstrated use cases for real-time outside of finance that pushed the technology forward. And I think it is social that took that forward. Robert Scoble, back in around 2009, thought that real-time search might be a killer of Google, and he was talking about friend feed, which basically accumulated loads of streams from other social sources. And what he really meant was that the data was instantly accessible as soon as it was posted at scale, which was a relatively new thing. Google didn't do that. Google took ages to spider sites and so on. So there was this obvious ability to access data in real time or in near real time. And then there was obvious benefits to this social communication platform. And Twitter is, a communication platform. It's not always, sometimes it's broadcast for people, but it's beneficial because it's a communication platform. And the other interesting thing, the reason I've highlighted this follow, is because what Twitter had done is they'd taken a very kind of technology-based idea, a subscription, and converted it into like a human interaction. So follow really means you're subscribing to updates from an individual. You like a product, you friend somebody, you follow someone on Instagram, you're actually subscribing to their data, and that translates very well to subscription to data. So as soon as new data is available, it means you know who's interested in it. Obviously, technology advancements. I don't want to go over my time too much, so I'm not going to go into this. We all know that technology has moved forward, browser standards and so on, the cloud, making technology more accessible. And the standards is really important because we have standards now like WebSocket, like event source, that mean that any technology that can make a TCP connection can ultimately connect and stream and receive real-time data. So taking our amazing diagram again, we've got these transport layers that have added to, reduce the amount of effort that we need to put in to reach that point of innovation. We've got, as I said, event source that standardized HTTP streaming and long polling, WebSocket for bidirectional real-time communication, and WebRTC for audio, video, and data peer-to-peer connectivity. It's worth highlighting as well, a lot more people use the internet now. In 2014, when I looked at doing this for the first time, well, for like a new revision of this talk, I've dug up some stats. So 200 billion emails are sent per day, most of them spam. 500 million tweets. There'll be more than that now, definitely, right? Although the uptake of Twitter is meant to be reducing, there will be more than that. And 200 million hours of YouTube is watched per day. Most of that, I think, is my 4-year-old son. And probably your kids if you've got them. So that's a crazy amount of internet usage. Mary Meeker does an internet trends report every year, and this is the slide from the 2015 version. And on average, the US adult spends 5.6 hours a day in comparison to 2.7 hours back in 2008. I'm pretty sure that we all spend more than 5.6 hours online a day, right? So we're probably dragging that average up. So that's kind of where we are now, real-time apps in 2015. So the present, I want to talk about the use cases for real-time technology. So how is real-time technology being applied and added to applications? And I also want to talk about something I'm calling communication patterns, just because it makes me feel clever. Hopefully it'll make sense kind of what I mean. It might be a paradigm, it might just be a programming concept. But how they're applied to real-time frameworks and therefore real-time functionality in these use cases. So the first use case of real-time is generally signaling. Sound's not working.
Bug that he's been trying to squash for the last couple of days. He's struggling, and then eventually he comes across a solution, and then he wants to give a high five. He wants a high five from his team. So he then, go ahead. Woo, yeah! High five!
Sound's still going somewhere.
This is
So I know Adam,
device,
and I know he's done a million hacks better than that. So this isn't a demonstration of amazing IoT. This is to demonstrate signaling. So what this is Sid Lawrence, most people might know him from We Make Awesome Shh, and Russell Thomas. This was Culture Hack Scotland in 2013. But all Sid's done is all Russell's done is he's pressed the button, it sent a signal, which has ultimately landed on Sid's machine and moved a motor. Now, the point there is it's a very simple signal, and in terms of data payload, there doesn't actually need to be anything. Just the fact that a signal has been received and that thing just does one action is a very simple example of signaling. Another example, this very handsome chap. WebRTC. Who's played with WebRTC? Okay, so you probably know more than me. But my thought behind this is that ultimately what you're doing is you're connecting to and then more peers. So all you do is send this very simple data, reasonably simple data payload with some content, and it tells those peers, I know that there's a dance, but libraries abstract that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the idea is that you've got two peers that ultimately need to connect to each other. It might not be the best example, but again, a relatively simple signal and payload. So I'm calling this communication pattern simple messaging. And WebSocket offers this. So we connect, should have connected over the WSS, sorry. I assign a function to the onMessage property. Anytime a message is received, that callback's made. In this case, I'm parsing the data from the event. I'm looking at an action property that I know is on there. Maybe if it's present, it's a high five. If there's a peer ID on it, then I know I'm doing a WebRTC connection. Again, just the point of this is just to show how simple that interface is and the communication between the client and server. On the server, you just have a socket and you send a payload over that. Now, if you want to do anything more than that, you need to add your own communication protocol to that payload. So this generally provides like the base layer on top of the these transports. The next most common, who's seen a notification in an app before? Yeah, okay. So we all know what this means. ITV added this like 3 years ago or something, and they saw a tenfold increase in traffic in their site just because people thought, oh, this is live, real-time news. And all they're doing is, well, they are using Pusher to send the data to the browser, and they show a notification bar. When it's clicked, it brings the data in. Again, the point here isn't really to say what an amazing use case. It's to say everybody knows what this is now. This is a real-time experience that my mum, my dad, probably not my granny, but anybody normally who uses the internet at a reasonable frequency understands what that means. And the idea of notifications is that if you know a user is interested in something, then you can push it to them and give it to them in near real time. So PubSub fits pretty well with this. Most people are aware of PubSub, right? It's a messaging paradigm. I'm calling it communication pattern in this case. So this is actually Faye. I've, for some reason, changed the name. So I'm connecting. I'm subscribing to news. So I've got a callback. Anytime new news comes in, I can take whatever data it is from that and maybe add something to the UI. On the server, I just call publish. I identify the type of data it is, which is news, and I pass a headline. So PubSub's really good for like identifying and partitioning data. So we've got PubSub, and there's a reason why it's small. Activity streams. Everybody knows what an activity stream is. It's the lifeblood of social apps. So what has happened, what is happening right now, and people understand what that like user experience paradigm or whatever we want to call it is. I want to talk about evented PubSub. So at Pusher, we use a communication pattern called evented PubSub, which we've just made up. But if you think about Socket.io, it's very evented, so you bind to events on the socket. But you all can also use rooms and namespaces and then bind to events on that. So you can think of Socket.io in that sense as an evented PubSub solution. So this, we create a new connection to Pusher. We subscribe to, in this case, status. So I'm interested in status data. I can then bind to different events. So what is happening to that data? So a new status has been created. I get that callback. A new status has been updated. A new status has been deleted. So it maps really well to like CRUD. But the point is to identify the data, and then the events identify what's happened. And on the server, I just trigger an event. So I say push.trigger. Here's the channel status. Here's what's happened, created, and here's the value. So I text PubSub rocks with an ID 1, and then I change my mind. Say status updated text evented PubSub rocks with an ID 1. So when I receive that in the browser or in the mobile client, I know to update the status with that ID of 1 and delete it and so on. So I want to talk about how PubSub and in some ways evented PubSub map quite well to UI. So this is L'Equipe. I'm terrible at French. But it's a relatively complex kind of data visualization, not the most complex, but it's quite good to kind of partition the data. So we've got the main overview of the data, we've got a timeline of events, we've got formation, we've got some general stats, and we've also got tabs. And the nice thing obviously about PubSub is that at the minute I'm subscribed to statistics avec Butler, if I could pronounce well, right? But if I decide that I'm going to click on resultants, whatever that is, results, yeah?
Nick, help him out.
Please do, please do. Then I can unsubscribe from that stats channel and subscribe to the resultants channel. So I'm subscribing to data that UI is really interested in. Chat. Who uses a chat application? Come on. I'm not moving on until everyone's got a hand up. So everybody uses a chat application. We understand the value that it provides, communicating with friends, family, work scenarios, and real time really matters there. That, you know, there are experiences where it doesn't really matter. You'll eventually go back to the channel and see there's an unread thing. But if it's an ongoing conversation, chat really matters. Again, referring to Mary Meeker's Internet Trends report, 6 of the top 10 most used applications globally are messaging applications. So our chat applications do use real-time technology. So everybody, well, lots and lots and lots of people use chat. So I want to talk about this idea of PubSub versus evented PubSub, and I'm going to use Slack. Who uses Slack? Who have interest? Okay, lots of people, cool. So there's lots of stuff in here, and I spoke about using channels to partition the data, but Slack call their rooms channels, right? So you kind of want to subscribe to a channel which represents the Slack room or the Slack channel. And this is on the, that's one. The left-hand side, we've got the real content, the messages. And on the right-hand side, we've got things like channel details, the current topic, pinned items, and users. And that's kind of metadata. We've got the main data there. So we really want to subscribe to, in this case, the Dev Experience channel, and then bind to different events for different types of data. So if we do that with PubSub, you add that evented abstraction naturally anyway. I've seen lots of examples here where you have stuff like this. So I subscribe to the DevX channel, I add an event type to my payload, so then when I receive it on the client, I just kind of check the event type. If it's a chat message, I add that to the UI. If it's a channel purpose change, then update the room title. And you end up with this if-else or a switch statement. And I see that a lot in PubSub solutions. And evented PubSub just results in much more succinct code and nicer structured code, in my opinion. So we subscribe to the channel, the Defects channel, we bind to the chat message, and we have a callback function specifically for that. We have a purpose change, and a specific handler for that, and for current topic change, and for user online and user offline. So I think it fits really well, and it generally fits with most use cases quite well, because you identify the data, and then you identify what's happened. Or you identify the context, and you identify what's happening in that context. So we've got Evented PubSub, which I feel moves us closer to innovation, and it is a better solution. Who's used Uber? Have you got Uber here?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Wicked. So I've got to highlight Uber because they're not a taxi company, right? They're an app company. And one of the reasons I want to highlight it is because one of the reasons they're popular is because of the experience that their application provides. They let you see the taxis around you in real time. They let you choose a taxi. They let you see that taxi coming to you in real time. So it's providing that great experience. You can tell your friends or who you're going to meet the status of your journey. You can even contact the driver, which might jump you into SMS. But it's revolutionised the taxi industry. And again, the point here is that we know they're using real-time technologies, but generally the users don't think that. They just know it's a great experience that application delivers. This is Atom Pair by Jamie Patel at Pusher, who wrote a plugin to GitHub's Atom editor to let you collaborate in real time. Who uses Google Docs? Who used to use Word and SharePoint? Okay, well, a few people, yeah, so I feel your pain. It was a nightmare. You'd create a new document, you'd save it, you'd email it to people, they'd have to track changes, maybe email it back, or you check it into SharePoint and check it out again. Now, we write the document, we put it in Google Docs, and we share it with people, and we collaborate in real time. It's a much better workflow, and it's a massive time saver. So I think this is somewhere that we really need to see real time being used a lot more to those kinds of collaborative experiences. Multiplayer games, any technology developers get hold of it and build games with it. Real-time tech is no different. This is actually Seb Lee at Symphony Live. He built a multiplayer lunar lander and then kept the trails on of the landing and created like a real-time multiplayer art demonstration, which I thought was really cool. And for that, I think in terms of collaboration and maybe even games, that ultimately you're sharing state between multiple devices. So what you might be doing there is you have an object that you manipulate through code, and then the framework deals with sending those change events and synchronizing across multiple devices. So an example, this is gun.io. It should say gun.io at the top. I just called it DataSync to remind me. So I'm creating a new synchronization. I'm accessing something called document 1. This ref on callback, that's called any time the data changes underneath document 1. And I need to work out what's happening. There are nicer APIs than this. Have a search for like DataSync solutions. Then I can add to that data structure. I'm putting here something with text and I'm giving it a unique key. I can then reference that object and set, in this case, the API is set null and I'm deleting it. And the point here is that you just write the client-side code and the framework deals with synchronizing those changes across multiple devices. You probably add some security rules on the back end and maybe you define the storage where you're actually going to persist that data, but the framework deals with all that for you. So that adds DataSync to our stack. The next one is RPC RMA. Does anybody use a remote procedure call or remote method invocation solution? Okay, I'd be really interested to speak to you because I need a use case for this. And I don't really have one. I can see that it's useful for some scenarios. The example I've got is this is an FX motif at Catherine, who I used to work for, and this is executing a foreign exchange trade. Now, for this, you need to open the trade, get an open acknowledgement, wait for it to become executable. You can withdraw the trade, or it can expire. Or you can execute it, and the trade is then confirmed. You need to get a confirm acknowledgement, or it could expire. And dealing with that kind of back and forward between the server as just messaging is relatively complex. And then you might have swap trades, which is a two-legged trade, or a butterfly trade, which is a three-legged trade. And dealing with that, again, just with messaging, you're naturally going to create an abstraction. And that's for me, it seems like that's the point of RMI, that it would give you your writing code against objects, and you call the function, and it ends up making a call across the wire for you, and it hides that complexity away. So that's what I think RMI and RPC are pretty good for. The negative of that is it's hiding away calls over the wire, which could cause some problems. So this is actually something called dnode, which is there's a bunch of implementations for this. Here on the client, I'm saying, well, I'm going to define my object has a new message function. It's called a message is sent to it, and I'm logging into the console. I'm going to bind to this on remote, which is just saying I've actually connected to the server. And when I connect, I'm going to call send message on the server. On the server, I've got an array of remotes. I'm going to pass in my definition. I've got this send message function, which receives a message. And then I loop through all my remotes and call the new message. So I'm calling back up to the client. And then I'm just adding it to this set of remote arrays. So you can kind of see how that maps and how it might be useful. So we've got RMI in there. So which one of these 5 communication patterns do you use? I've got this kind of way of thinking about it at the minute, and I'm interested in feedback, is that I think that if the data that you've got in your application is really simple, and the communication between client and server is really simple, then just sending a signal, a simple message over the wire kind of fits quite well. As the data becomes more complex, there's more data, and you want to partition and subscribe to it ultimately, then PubSub's maybe a good fit. I think evented PubSub, identifying the data, identifying what's happened to it, is an improvement upon that. RMI, I said, complex interactions and complex data, and data synchronization, which hides a lot of complexity away from you. You're just manipulating that object structure and letting the framework do everything, I think might fit up this top. And I think you might build a data synchronization solution with something like evented PubSub, where the channel represents the object and the events represent the changes that are taking place to that structure, but you need to build some stuff yourself with that. And here's where I think the use cases fit in. I've got the simple signaling for IoT, I've got notifications for PubSub, activity streams, IoT, chat, data visualizations, all fit in well with evented PubSub, and games and collaboration fit in with data sync. And I've got this geolocation in the middle. I don't know about RMI, so please do speak to me afterwards so I can put something in there. So the point in all of that is probably some thinking about how your client and server or your devices communicate, but also thinking about the use cases and how they're becoming essential within the applications that every user is using. So whether it's Facebook and the real-time message wall, the activity streams, the chat that it offers, real-time collaboration between customers and support agents and user voice, real-time geolocation, communication with taxi drivers with Uber, or Google Docs, it's becoming truly essential. I asked our CEO about this, and he said, I'm not sure I believe there's such a thing as real-time apps anymore. Apps either update instantly and smoothly, or they appear broken. I feel that real-time as a feature has moved down the Kano graph. I'll explain what that is. It's much more of an expectation and exciting. Obviously, CEO of Pusher, a real-time company, he's going to say that. But I think he's got a point. Back in 2011, when we first came along, people would use Pusher and go, WebSockets are hard. And they'd add live updates to their apps, and people go, oh, that's really cool. So at the time, it was a delighter. But looking at the examples that I provided there, the real-time experience has become more of a basic need, and without it, the application feels broken. So the internet is now our communications platform. It's becoming the entertainment platform with YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, iPlayer, Spotify, and so on. And I'm going to keep harping on about this, that it's essential to give users, in certain scenarios, these real-time experiences. So, the future, what does the future hold? What do you think? Robots? It's got to be robots.
Shark
Please, shark lasers. Let's go shark lasers. Firstly, I think that if we're saying real-time is essential, then the network infrastructure needs to improve. There are still proxies and firewalls that get in the way of persistent connections, and you need those persistent connections to deliver real-time experiences. So that has to improve. So reliability and speed. Seems like you've got pretty good infrastructure in Bristol. I hope we get that in Dollar in Scotland, in Clackmannanshire. I don't think that's going to happen. Beyond HTTP, so we've got WebSocket, we've got WebRTC. Are there other protocols and transports that would better fit some of the things that we're building? HTTP2 looks like it's going to just out of the box improve a lot of our applications by pipelining connections and requests over a single TCP connection. Here's a bunch of protocols that are down for like PubSub or synchronization or MIRPC. There are quite a lot of them, really, for the amount of frameworks. It would be great if there were standards there, and then we could start to benefit from having additional abstractions and more functionality built on top of these. I'm seeing WAMP starting to take off, not Winamp. Really kicks the llama's ass. I think it means like web application messaging protocol. Oh, I've got it written down here. That's helpful. So I think we've got the simple messaging. We still need that protocol that standardizes these communication patterns that I've spoken about. I was in Austin last week and API Strategy Conference, and I chaired a panel on real-time, well, it was called Post-HTTP World. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like the verb post? They meant beyond HTTP. So what's happening beyond HTTP? They're being very clever, but it just confused everybody. But loads of people turned up, so that's what to do. Call your topics stupid things. And it's very surprising that people aren't moving towards like WebSocket APIs, although there are some people still want to stick with HTTP for everything. Maybe that's just what we're used to. HTTP streaming, maybe, but people don't even like webhooks. Like corporates don't like to have to receive incoming requests from other servers. So I think we're kind of struggling, but there are real-time APIs out there, and there are lots of applications that you might not, you consider them to have APIs, but they actually offer like WebSocket APIs, webhooks, and so on. So I think we'll see more of that, but I was hoping it was going to move faster than it is. I don't think it is. I'm not going to talk a lot about IoT, but has anyone seen this one before? There are going to be 200 billion devices connected by 2020, and we're each going to have 26 smart objects on us. So I've got a Fitbit, which doesn't work half the time. See? And a phone at the minute, and that's it. So we're going to have 26 smart objects. I think that's crazy. Google are touting this thing called the physical web, which is really cool, which is any device can provide a URL, which can potentially deep link into an application or take you to a web page, and then you start communicating with that device via your phone or your tablet or so on, apparently via WebSocket, according to this dude. So that's quite interesting. I think, as we start to walk around and more things want to communicate with us, and we have a central way to do that through apps and through the web. One of the main things I want to talk about IoT apps and developers and how these things fit together. And Ben actually talks about this in his Internet of Browsers thing, very succinctly as well. A thing is a thing that does a thing, right? Yeah, so a thing can be anything. So, yeah, is that fair? What do I mean by that? We focus on sensors, and we focus on accelerometers, and we focus on humidity, like sensors and hardware things, right? And that kind of makes sense because it's new for us and it's all of a sudden accessible for us. But so sensors, appliances, vehicles, smartphones, devices, and we all think that that's all it is. But really, like servers are still a thing, browsers are still a thing, the applications we build are still a thing. So I think we need, I don't know, I like the fact that we can play with stuff and build flying stuff and laser sharks. Yes. Like who wouldn't want to build a laser shark?
I'm working on it.
Yeah, but the majority of code that we write will not be interacting with the lasers on a shark. The majority of code that we write will be around configuration and helping users configure things, around monitoring and visualizing these IoT devices, where they are, what they're doing, and how they're behaving, dealing with the interactions through applications with these devices, and all the logic that plugs all of this stuff together, which will probably very infrequently be turning on a light. It will be all that intelligence that makes the smart homes of the future something really special. That's not going to be interacting with the actual thing, the light or the sensor or so on. And I think that's quite an important thing. It's great to play with this stuff, but we're still going to spend a lot of time building apps that users use. I don't want to hold people off the pizza too long. So this was obviously entitled Real-Time Web Apps, like the future. And I've spoken about a bunch of use cases. You've all gone, well, I've heard of all those before. And I'd love to say there are a million use cases, but there generally aren't. Like, we see the common use cases for real-time technologies on our platform all the time. And that isn't going to happen. We're just going to see those used more throughout applications. And again, the users will expect those types of experiences and understand what a notification means, understand what an activity stream is, understand how to interact through chat, understand the real-time collaboration with multiple people exists. But it doesn't mean they won't evolve. So this is the Google notification screen, and I guess relatively recently they started adding actions to those notifications. So that kind of makes sense, that the notification providing actions that you can directly interact with without diving into the application. That's kind of a real time saver. I think we're going to definitely see more of that. Activity streams, notifications providing direct actions. Google Now is a really good example for a bunch of reasons. I mentioned identifying things that data that users are interested in. So this wasn't me, honest. I don't know who Johnny Manziel is. Don't Google him. He looks like a football player. Okay. But it's asking me, do I want to subscribe to updates? It's saying, oh, do you want to be reminded about new releases? So each of these is a subscription. Google's trying to work out what data you're interested in so it can inform you about it. And there's one up there about baseball that says you've already told me you're interested in this. This is where you're seeing it. So we've got all these subscriptions that are taking place, and solutions like Google Now or Google in general are pulling in data from all these different sources and providing a personalized event stream. So, and we get that in Google Now. It pulls data in from Gmail, from your calendar, from various other Google sources, from news and so on, and provides you with that information in a uniformed UI. So now we've got these personalized event streams. Hopefully they'll be in some sort of standard data format, and hopefully we can start to see this very uniformed UI, which maybe we see. I haven't got a smart. Look at that. I've got a dumb watch again, but we might get a smartwatch that has standard data format for events that identifies what is the data, what are the actions, and then we can start to see these unified UIs on our devices. Chat is just exploding. WeChat in China has 549 million active users a month, which is pretty huge. It's got 10 million integrations. And from those integrations, you do not leave WeChat. You can book an appointment with a doctor, you can pay for a taxi, you can play games, you can interact with friends, you can obviously do all the sort of chatty stuff. But you do all of that inside of WeChat. I think we're going to start to see HipChat have opened up their API. Slack are kind of doing similar things. You can build integrations now. But we're going to start to see more things like this where you don't leave chat. Chat becomes basically a platform of its own. Somebody wrote a blog post about this, that they're booking time off. Somebody wrote recently the ability to order an Uber via a Slack command. Virtual assistants, I think we're going to see more of that. Siri, Microsoft Cortana, Google Now, Facebook M. What's the Amazon one called again? Echo.
Alexa.
Alexa.
Echo's the hardware of Alexa.
Okay.
Alexa's
So Sam's done a really cool hack, so grab him later and he'll show you that as well. So we're going to definitely see more of that. And my clicker stopped working. So chat has evolved. As I said, chat really is now a platform with APIs, with the ability to embed UIs and so on. Here's Ben again. I don't know, did you do this talk here?
I think so, actually, yeah.
Oh, well, people have seen it again.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I've got this tablet here, so I can add this second device, and everything should rejiggle. And I can touch with this new device, but I can also still touch the old device. And what we've got is we've got a kind of inter-device multi-touch gesture here.
so we definitely need more inter-device multi-touch gestures, right? But if you think about it, we're going to have 26 smart objects on us. Do we only ever want to be interacting with one of them? How many smart devices are we going to have around our home? Are we only ever going to use our mobile phones to interact them, or are we going to be able to use multi-touch gestures to somehow interact and provide a better experience with using these devices? So I think Ben's got a point. So in summary, you'd be pleased to hear, it's pizza time. The internet is definitely our communication platform. We do everything on the internet. Too much probably. It's easier than ever before to innovate. As we moved up that stack, it's a lot easier to build on top of these building blocks we've got. Did I say that users expect real-time experiences? Have I mentioned that? I definitely believe that. Please speak to me if you disagree. I'd love to hear more. It's a great conversation to have. Lots of stuff in the future, infrastructure standards, IoT, event streams, use case evolution, and chat everywhere. And I do think it's important to think that like the real-time internet applications are IoT. We focus on hardware, we focus on devices, but browsers are things, servers are things, apps are things, devices are things, and we use the internet to plug all these things together and to build amazing experiences using real-time technology. Thank you very much. A couple of minutes for questions and then pizza time. Any questions? We're all hungry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how do you see kind of RESTful APIs fitting in with all this? Do you see them as complementary at all? Do you see them maybe real-time taking over RESTful APIs and becoming the kind of standard of the web?
So the question is, how do RESTful APIs fit in with that? That was one of the points of the API strategy conferences talk. There's a bunch of ways that it naturally fits in. I mean, I think in any application, you identify data through a RESTful call. Sometimes they could be thought of as a subscription. I'd like to see more of these RESTful calls providing a callback as well, so that then anytime new data changes within the system, you've got the initial payload and then you get deltas or changes through that callback mechanism. I think the difference, there's a question around the transports. So, as I said at the conference, everybody still just wants to use HTTP. They don't want to move to WebSocket. They don't want to use. They're not even using like event source really. People aren't using HTTP streaming. They're okay with kind of webhooks because they understand how that works. So I think there's still lots of questions around that. The talks will be up, and I'll tweet about those. I'll share those with.
So maybe the WebSocket is kind of used as a notification framework and said there's some new data, and then you can like maybe get a RESTful API to actually make sure that you've got fresh data, or make sure that because I guess one of the challenges with WebSockets is you could receive stuff out of sync, maybe receive something when it was actually sent.
That really depends on that depends on the underlying protocol, whether it deals with sequencing things. I think Sales.js provides the same data via a RESTful API and via WebSocket. Happiness is in development by the folk that did Happy, and I think they're trying to offer that similar WebSocket and RESTful API. One more question? He shouted. Yeah.
I should shout. How do you see WebRTC fitting into it?
Well, it's peer-to-peer connectivity, isn't it? And I think there are some restrictions with that in terms of the number of users that you can connect together. I think it's obviously got a benefit. People are building lots of stuff with WebRTC. The focus is always on audio and video, but it obviously isn't just audio and video.
The data side of it.
Yeah, data side of the thing. So people are like building BitTorrent clients over WebRTC. I still think that the majority of use cases will require client-server communication or client-to-client communication via an intermediary, even if it's just a handshake to then connect the peer-to-peer connections. I think it's still early days. It's obviously going to be big. I think from the collaborative point of view, it works a lot better with voice and audio. Like the ATI pair or Google Docs, if you're really collaborating, you don't want to chat and also type. You want to speak and also type. So it's really important. Okay, I've got loads of t-shirts. Well, I've got 29 litres of t-shirts. So I'll chuck them down here and please grab one. Thanks very much.